thank you everybody for coming, thank you for tuning in on Instagram Live, and thank you for watching this recording if you're doing that later. I'm Jillian Knipe. I'm sitting here with painter Rebecca Byrne in front of her beautiful paintings and my take on the spaces within her paintings, which I've done on the wall. This is all part of a group exhibition called Logical Extracts and Other Fantasies, which includes painters Alice Browne, Burton, and also Laura Wormell. So I basically invited these artists to play around with their work in the context of spaces, because that's a critical part of what I look at when I am looking at work, probably before I'm really thinking about the subject of the work. So it's really about my perception of the work, which I have imposed on these painters' work. So I don't know how they feel about that, but Rebecca's going to tell us. But firstly, can you introduce your work to us, please, which I understand is from a residency, and as part of that residency, you began your big foray into fluorescent pink.
My big shift. Well, as Jillian mentioned, I started, I went on this residency in 2021 or 22, I can't even remember now. And it was in rural France in the middle of the most beautiful forest, and I was there for a month. And I actually brought a box of pastels with me, thinking I would use those as warm-ups, and between the pastels and the acrylics I brought, I would take these walks in the morning, and I was really struck by how the light was coming through the trees, and it was this really kind of almost a fluorescent orangey light. And I was kind of fascinated by how it was hitting all the plants, and it was April, so everything was kind of coming back to life at a time when thinking about resilience was heavy in my mind. And I would go back to the studio and I would work on these small pieces, really quick, really fast, with impressions of the things I'd seen in the forest. And then one of the other artists on the program, Kevin Ford, who's an American painter who's really lovely, really talented, he said, why don't you think about changing your ground color? It could be really exciting if you did some really vibrant colors. Hold on! And he ran down the hall and came back with this bucket of fluorescent pink for me and said, why don't you try this? And then that kind of kicked off my experimenting with the color relationships on this insanely vibrant, strong color. And that kind of started everything through different mediums, like pastels, the paintings, everything.
Yeah, so when I was in your studio and I saw these up on the wall, I was so struck by the liveliness of them and the energy of them.
Yeah.
But then by taking the shapes that I have, I'm particularly proud of this one because we go from the orangey colour to the seamlessly, you might notice. But by taking these shapes and simplifying them and turning them into something that's quite geometric is, that's a very different visual representation than all the sprightliness and brightness of yours. So what was your impression when you saw what I'd done to your work?
Well, first of all, I really loved the ghosty bits that you could see through too.
Yeah. And, we're pretending were on purpose, but they were accidental.
Definitely accidentally on purpose. I whenever I'm doing something, even within my work, I like to look for that tension. And I thought, oh, this is great. This is bringing out. My marks are very gestural and very quick and fast and intuitive, and I liked that tension that happened between the marks you chose to put on the wall or the shapes you put on the wall. So it's like pulling different things out of here that are the things you don't see obviously or at first. Yeah.
And also, I was very mindful, but I had to sort of try and take it out of my mind that you have an exhibition at the moment at School Gallery in Hoxton. And in that, instead of the curator imposing shapes or other visuals in the room, you have done that. In fact, you've done a take of sorts on the parting of the Red Sea, but it's the parting of the fluoro pink sea along the walls. Yeah. So you worked with the gallerist is
Michael Hall.
Yeah. You worked with him. How did that negotiation go on with doing some sort of interference in the wall that would really direct the viewer as to how they read the paintings?
Well, Michael is incredibly generous, super supportive. So basically he said, you know, what would you like to do? And then everything he did was to facilitate me being able to do what I wanted, which was so generous. And I did change my mind, and then he said, okay, we'll do something else then. But I frequently like to do immersive works. So, and you don't always get the opportunity as an artist or get the space or the time to be able to do something immersive that people can walk through. So for that exhibition, I wanted to make the gallery a painting. So as you said, it's like the parting. I didn't think of it as the parting, but yeah, it totally makes sense. I drew a horizon line low on the wall all the way around the space, and then I did what was important to me, a very simple black and white line drawing that kind of wanders around and has all sorts of different bodily shapes in it, and generally kind of resembles the scaffolding of a tree. And then that tree is rooted in the horizon that I put around the bottom of the whole gallery. And I'm really, really happy with how that kind of gave a space for the work to hang in as well.
Yeah, and you've got a book launch coming up as well.
And June 21st, yeah.
June 21st.
So and the printer is struggling with how to get that pink right, so
yeah.
It's not ready yet.
Yeah. It is not easy. So, do you find, in your experience, we can think about these sort of animations of the work as extensions of the work or expansions of the work, but they also enclose the work and they also direct the viewer in a particular way. So have you got particular experiences that you've thought really worked and really didn't work, that you found difficult, either with your practice or looking at other people's practices?
I think my friend Selma put it perfectly. She said art is an experience, and I thought, oh yeah, that perfectly kind of encapsulates, I guess, what I chase all the time, is creating some sort of an experience for someone else to have. So I might have certain things in my mind when I'm making my own work, and I think we all do, and I really enjoy when someone comes up and has their own experience with it, which may or may not be the same as what I was thinking of, but I love that. I like to embrace that. And so yeah, I've probably had great experiences looking at someone else's. I remember taking my kids when they were tiny, like 18 months old or something, to a Kara Walker exhibition in Chicago where we lived, and it's totally dark in the space, and it was these, you know, characters around, or people around dancing around the walls, and thinking what a great experience they were getting. And yeah, so I think any experience like that always intrigues me and excites me.
Yeah. I saw an exhibition which I had the opposite of that, because often you find that it can be really invigorating. I remember seeing a Bridget Riley exhibition, and in the last room you could put on headphones and listen to this classical music that she perhaps listened to when she made the work, and it seemed to sort of visually extend the work way beyond the canvases, which I thought was really enriching, but it's almost like a performance piece then, which I was totally fine with. But, you know, I'm sure some of the purists might not be, but in an opposite example, I went to an exhibition where the curator had put these really heavy metal frames around everybody's individual works, so just really imposed his ego, I thought, really on everybody else's work. So it doesn't always work perfectly. And there's also, you've had people write about your work. So have you found that people's take on your work in writing has sort of introduced new ideas? And
well, the most recent one is the fact that I was so honored. Adam Leslie, who has just won the Nero Prize for Fiction for his book Lost in the Garden, he saw my work and wrote an essay in response to that called A Letter Found in a Tree, in a Dream. And it's about what if you could step into one of my paintings and pluck a letter out of one of the knots and the holes in the tree, and what would it read like? And that was just really amazing and really beautiful. We've never met. The fact that he saw that and wrote that meant so much to me. And so that will also be in the publication. So that was thrilling to me, because I had never thought about that. I never thought about, you know, what someone else's experience would be in writing about an experience of looking at my work. So in having his own kind of fantasy about what would it be like if someone tucked a letter for someone else to find. It's really, really beautiful.
That's interesting because it also makes me think about the when you say that the sort of fantasies of being inside the work, there's also the fantasies of what might come out of the work, because in some of your trees you now have these characters that are coming out, sort of becoming really quite surrealist, and then you start wondering, well, what else is tucked in this tree somewhere, you know, like Enid Blyton's Faraway Tree or something like that. So how did that come about with your work?
I think it started as I got more and more internal with the making, and a lot of it is very meditative because it's a very repetitive process. When I'm working with the pastels, it's just layers and layers of color all the time, and their relationships with each other. I mean, I think people get surprised when I say, oh, I'm thinking about Joseph Albers sometimes, because you put one color next to another and it completely changes that one and changes that one and changes that one. And because I'm doing them all in these multiple marks, similar to the paintings, I guess, but with the pastels, they're even more and more layered. Everything, you know, a really boring color on that fluorescent pink can all of a sudden look incredible, and vice versa. A really great color in the box, you try to work with it, and you're like, ooh, that just did not work at all. So I guess I'm thinking about color relationships all the time, and then that led me to just kind of letting myself flow a little bit more freely, looking at Dorothea Tanning and Ethel Calhoun and Remedios Varos, and I stopped trying to control things maybe so much, and I started just letting things start appearing, and they're also very personal, so the things that will appear are horses, and my grandfather was, you know, he as soon as he got later on in life, he bought horses, because he loved horses. He was an Irish guy who wound up in Chicago, and he used to muck out the stalls for like 10 cents when he was a small child, which would be probably illegal now to let children do that.
In some countries.
But yeah, exactly. He was the 8th of 9 children, and he loved horses. He'd do anything to be around them. And then as he became an older man, he was able to buy some broken down racehorses and things like that, just to have around more as like large dogs than anything else. And he did like to have them race with his brother as well, but he did a bit of both. But yeah, so they wind up in there in different things that just take my imagination, I suppose.
And also I imagine working with the fluorescent pink, the chalk in itself has that sort of dustiness to it, but also a lot of the colours are quite dusty.
Yeah.
So it really, everything just pops, the fluoro pink pops, but you get that in your own little spaces in the work itself. So that must be really delightful when you're doing that, when you're making the work.
And I'm thinking about like connections and disconnections, and how, you know, we are connected to each other, and sometimes trying to reach each other and not finding each other, and so making those spaces and those sorts of energy flows in the work. That's also in my mind as well. In those spaces that are left to sit there on their own. Yeah. And is that why you worn your fluoro pink? No, but I did buy this, and I've been wearing it all the time, and I just love it. Like when I saw this, I was like, oh, I have to have that scarf. Well, Rebecca Byrne, thank you very much for today, for chatting with me. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to talk to...
Say the name of your book.
Pardon?
Say the name of your book.
Oh, Wildland. But it's not. It's the publication for the exhibition. It's called Wildland. And then Adam Leslie's book is Lost in the Garden. Very beautiful book.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.